Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to get us started. I'm Kathleen Voss, professor and chair of the marketing department here at the Carlson School of Management. I'd like to welcome you to First Tuesday. Today, our featured speaker is Lili Hall, founder, CEO, and president of Knock, a Minneapolis-based creative agency. Lili will be joined for a fireside chat by John Stavig, professional director of the Carlson School's Gary S. Holmes Center for Entrepreneurship. But before we turn things over to Lili and John, I want to first recognize First Tuesday's longstanding corporate and media partners, Wells Fargo and Twin Cities Business, and of course, thank you. And a very special thanks to all the Carlson School of Management and University of Minnesota supporters here with us today. I am thrilled to introduce today's featured speaker, Lili Hall. Lili founded the creative agency Knock in 2001 with a commitment to impeccable client service and a nimble response to new entrepreneurial opportunities. Lili's team designs powerful experiences that matter, connecting customers to brands in all categories and all disciplines. Additionally, Lili owns two sister companies, Treat & Company, a strategic design studio, and Neighbor, a video and animation company. For her work, Lili has been named one of EY's Entrepreneurial Winning Women and a Most Admired CEO by Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal. Lili serves on multiple nonprofit boards, including the Carlson School's Home Center for Entrepreneurship, Global Thinkers Forum, C2000, and the Walker Arts Center. Lili is a University of Minnesota graduate, whoop whoop, and she holds a Master's of Management degree from McGill University. Lili will begin by giving us an overview of her career and her companies, and then John Stavig, director of the Home Center, will come up and lead a fireside chat before we take questions from the audience. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Lili Hall. Hi, congratulations. Thank you.
I have to wear these glasses because I had cataract surgery, and they told me that I had to wear these in places that didn't have UV protection. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's artwork. There might be UV protection, but that's why I'm wearing these goggles. So I'm Lili Hall. Thank you for being here today. I'm the founder and CEO of Knock, which is a people-focused, future-forward creative agency driven to build love and loyalty for businesses, brands, and communities. Today, after 21 years in business, through a couple of recessions, the tragic murder of George Floyd, a cancer diagnosis, a global pandemic, we continue to be healthy and successful, and for that, I am incredibly grateful. My entrepreneurial journey was not what you might call planful in the least, and I think it's okay not to know exactly what you're going to do with your life as a young adult, and I know that we have a lot of young adults here, and I did not know what I was doing. Had I known all that goes into starting a business and businesses, I probably would have run the other way. What I will say is that it's good to have goals for your future, but following your intuition is also important. Sometimes long-term goals and the randomness of intuition aren't always aligned, and other unforeseen obstacles and detours can show up along the way. I'm so proud to be an alum of the University of Minnesota. I graduated with an international relations degree from the College of Liberal Arts. And John will laugh at this because I started my school sometime in the 80s, but I didn't graduate until early 2000. Why, you ask? I was restless. I also had a 15-foot U-Haul truck packed and ready to go to Chicago to start my life. It was layered with a combination of paperwork and bureaucracy, and for those of you who studied in the 80s and 90s at the University of Minnesota, you know what I'm talking about. But I finished, and I like knowing I have a degree from here. As mentioned, I serve on the board of the Home Center of Entrepreneurship, which brings me so much joy and fulfillment. It's an honor to know and collaborate with John and my fellow advisory members, some of them are here today, to continue to build on its legacy so that others might have opportunities in entrepreneurship. I quit my job in May of 2001. At the time, I was the main breadwinner in my family, and I had a 2-year-old daughter. In fact, I started Knock 2 months after 9/11 in the middle of a recession. All of this seems absurd in hindsight, but I'd made the commitment and I was destined to do it. With the kitchen table as my first home office and a Citibank Visa card as my angel investor, a card I still have today, along with American Express because they are now a client, I began Knock with the entrepreneurial mind of my father and the heart of my mother, a woman who raised us to believe that no one was above us or beneath us, that we should treat everyone with respect. I made sure my name was not a part of the company's identity. I was also a little scared to have my name on it. While I was investing in my own business, it wasn't about me as much as it was about bringing the experts along so that we can think bigger, better, and be more inventive. That includes my business partners, Todd Paulson, Lisa Frederickson, and Rich Hazemeyer from our other companies. We also have a board of advisors. We meet quarterly, as well as our amazing day-to-day team of collaborator leaders, also some of them who are here today, who represent all of our creative agencies' disciplines. Today, we are 108 people with our headquarters here in Minneapolis, but we also have staff in Chicago, and we are soon launching a Miami office. We have remote employees now in other cities too. Our clients range from grassroots to global, and we're super proud of that, representing a variety of industries: retail, financial services, health and wellness, food and beverage, travel, hospitality, and CPG. We are very busy and thankful for that. Almost skipped ahead, missing a page here. Bringing people along also means immersing yourself in networks that support you, your ideas, and your vision. We are better when we do it together. And that means, of course, being part of the Alumni Association here at the university, and also an active member of WE, Women Entrepreneurs. But along the way, I also joined a number of women and minority-empowered networks. I am a Brazilian American with dual citizenship. Networks and networking are the nucleus of change and possibility, where you can see people sharing ideas, making decisions, building better businesses across the world. Organizations like WPO, Women's Presidents Organization, Global Thinkers Forum, NABO, WeBank, NMSDC, I can share what they all mean if you want to know later. EY's Entrepreneurial Winning Women, and C200, my C200 sisters here, all support me and I support them. It's a win on multiple fronts. Having a philanthropic heart is embedded in my DNA. It's the hallmark of my upbringing. Since Knock was founded, I've been a part of the community through sharing of our talents, sponsoring fundraisers, supporting nonprofits, sitting on boards, mentoring students and interns, particularly women and BIPOC populations. We all have talents and gifts. My advice is that we share them as best we can and watch people and causes evolve and become successful. The returns will be invaluable. There is no one way to be an entrepreneur, but having a solid education, being connected to experts, becoming a part of professional networks, and living out your values will guide you in your decision-making. Whether that be planful goals or wild, restless dreams, both are important for your future. Thank you. And there's going to be a little video here, 1 minute on Knock.
All right. Very cool video and work. Can you hear us all right? Start off on that. I mean, in these COVID times of having a creative agency where you have to collaborate together, and we've been to your office so many times, how have you been able to keep that culture?
I think for us, it's actually been pretty good. I think in the beginning, I'd been paying attention to what was happening in the world, and I went to our leadership team and I said, the U.S. is going to shut down, and please start preparing. Went to IT and told them to get everybody ready with technology, hardware, software, and we actually started practicing about a week before our state was shut down. So our team was ready. I would say the thing that we were most concerned about is obviously creative agency, collaborating, and those brainstorms. How are you going to brainstorm, on Zoom? So, but the team really, really did a great job. We just kept communicating a ton and, getting feedback and more feedback and just really supporting each other.
Really awesome work. So we went to school together in the 80s. We've agreed long ago that we're not going to share stories there. So we've signed that away. But tell us a little bit about your post-University of Minnesota early career, and what were the steps in that really positioned you for entrepreneurship or gave you the confidence to go do it?
Well, I mean, I think it's experiences, and so when we finished, the job market was pretty challenging at that time as well, and so I think for me, I'd moved to Chicago, and I was certain I was going to get a job, and it proved to be challenging, and so I think it was really building off of relationships and meeting people, and really being open to things that maybe I hadn't considered. I just, like all of you in your first job, you just need that person to open that door. And so I think just being open-minded about what that could be and getting experience.
So did going into sales and business development kind of help and give you the confidence? Or?
It's interesting. I mean, I think so. I actually was in Chicago and then got invited to work in New York City. It was like The Devil Wears Prada, but it was before that. And I worked for a designer in a showroom, and that was really interesting. It was really hard. I cried every day when I left because they were mean to me, and no one had ever been that mean to me in my life. But I think and I remember saying I would never treat anyone this way. But moving back to Chicago, I got hired right away, and I think just having that one door open and having those experiences and watching how other people led, and I'm a big observer, like how are they doing this, and learning from others was really a big still is. I learned from all of you.
Yeah. So you've been incredibly generous with hosting. I've lost track of how many women's entrepreneur speakers we've had over at your office and hosted the events, or pro bono students. A lot of times I ask for help from people in the community. You are soliciting me for are there students that we can help? So you've been incredibly generous throughout, and I know your mom had a huge influence on your life, and maybe is the genesis for that. Tell us about her impact, and how she inspired you in terms of kind of this give first mentality.
Sure. I mean, I was born in Chicago, moved to, I tell people I was exported to Brazil and then re-imported. And we lived with my grandparents. And so my dad was American. He saw he thought a developing country and thought that there was opportunities there, but it turned out that there wasn't. So he started a business that failed and came back to the US, but we stayed in Brazil with my grandparents. And just watching them and how they cared for people, and always helping, whether it's a meal or clothing or a loan, observing that as a young child, and also living in a developing country, and you see a lot of poverty and a lot of really challenging circumstances. So I think it's very vivid. Those are the most vivid memories I actually have of my childhood. I actually took a city bus to school with my brothers, and saw things that, were shocking as, a 5-6-year-old girl. And then when we came back to the U.S., as in many immigrant communities, they find each other. And so my mom, wherever she lived, found all the Brazilians. And she helped everybody. I mean, they helped her when she came to the US, and so I think it's this culture of helping, opening doors. She had fabulous parties and invited everybody, and some of the people are here that had attended her
The
parties.
apple doesn't fall far from the tree
No,
there.
no. She could stay up later than me, but yeah, we do have parties at the Knock Clubhouse.
So she stays as one who normally closes out just about every
Yeah.
event. I'm
She
impressed.
would have been there
Maria
longer.
would have
been
beaten us all.
just, calling me boring and telling me, like, party's not over.
So you talked about your angel investor
Yes.
as a credit card starting out.
Do
so
not do that.
that's one good piece of advice. So, but it was a different time then really when you started. There
Right.
weren't the networks and the resources available. So how would you advise people to approach that now if they're starting their own venture?
Do not use your credit card as your form of investment. I mean, I would say, and we talk a lot about this, especially in our networks, women-owned and minority-owned businesses. Access to capital and access to networks are the two biggest challenges that we face. And I had no idea what my options were when I started Knock, and I, definitely have learned a ton along the way, and know now that there's different sources that I could tap into.
All right. So in terms of, kind of supplementing your talents, and we had a discussion a couple weeks ago, about how some entrepreneurs and women in particular, might hold themselves back thinking they aren't able to do everything in the company. You've been a big proponent of kind of pulling in experts or pulling in advisors, and some of your team is here today. Talk about your approach to that and how that helped you to get started and keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, I would say none of us know it all. And so I think that being able to ask for help, which was really hard in the beginning, but once I kind of figured out that was okay, it became very liberating. I asked for help all the time, whether it was with my business, whether it was with, raising my kids. But I would say that I'm a huge fan of experts. You've got to bring them in. You have to invest. I did work for an incredible woman in Chicago. She wasn't a mentor, but she gave me an opportunity, and she kind of let me run my own show in terms of what I was doing there. But she said you have to spend money to make money. And I think that's something, and I don't want to make it a gender conversation, but I do observe in some of my networks that, in particular, a lot of women don't necessarily do that in the same way as our male counterparts do. And so I think that, and I think just not knowing, right? You make an investment in your business, you buy a building, you buy equipment. I mean, nobody really knows the return. I mean, I think in your head you can kind of imagine, but I think that's the part that has helped us, is that, I always say we've been building a long-term business in a short-term world and making those investments. Some have paid off, some have not. But, I think we've, learned that we have to do that in order to grow and scale.
Yeah, and I think, significant research, not only clearly do, women get a lot less venture, angel, other types of financing, but oftentimes they ask for less.
Absolutely.
And, I think part of the women's entrepreneurship is really trying to push women, to be more aspirational and to push themselves.
We've got Marsha Page who could share some stats on that. You could run up here and share how much money women get in terms of the venture world, right? Yeah, so ask for a lot of money and think 10 times bigger than you would, than you're thinking.
What about in terms of, partners that you bring in, these experts and advisors? Yeah, obviously you're looking to, kind of supplement your talents and fill in some of the areas. What else do you look for?
I mean, we always look for people who are really passionate about not only what we're doing, but what they're doing, that it's not a transaction for us. It's really about relationships. And I would say that our partners, the majority of them have been long-term partners, whether it's, our accounting firm, our lawyers, and that's what we look for. People who are gonna lock arms with us, teeny tiny business and grow with us. And I think that bankers, and so I think for us it's really making sure that those people are passionate and believe in what we're doing, and that they have the skills and bring value to what we need.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about some of the obstacles. I think I've got a longer list than you had in terms of starting right after 9/11, building a company while raising 2 young daughters, buying your building during the Great Recession, pandemic, George Floyd, and then cancer. That's a lot, both personally and professionally, which are really difficult for you to separate at this point. Can you talk about kind of the roadblocks, how you overcame them, and how you learned to deal with things that are outside of your control?
Yeah, it's been a lot. Ooh, I'm gonna get emotional. I'm here, so that's good. I'm here. Honestly, it's having great family and friends and business partners and an amazing team. And I learned how to let go. Many of you know that it's hard for me to, I always want to be in it, not necessarily being controlling, but as much as just like not wanting to miss out on stuff. Yeah, it's been a lot, but I think I've been practicing gratitude. That mama of mine, Maria, she was amazing. And she would always say, not to diminish what we were going through, but she would always say it could always be worse. And it brings such perspective when you're like in the shits. Sorry, I'm swearing, Mom. She didn't like that. She did not like when I swore. But, I think it's just like thinking, especially when I got the call that you have cancer. I can't look at Amy because we have a dear friend who lost her battle. But I kept thinking that, I was grateful for the diagnosis that I got, that it was very positive. I still had to go through all the shit, surgery, radiation, chemo, other stuff, but it was very optimistic. I had incredible care and an incredible team and friends and family, and so I remember, how you sort of at the doctor's office and you're like, something's off because they're acting weird, back to the intuition and the instincts. And so I had a feeling, I was at the Mayo doing my executive health exam, and I had added my mammogram, even though I'm very unorganized in many aspects of my life, but I am very organized when it comes to my health and my annual and routine, and I'll preach to all of you in a second. But I added the mammogram, even though I'd had one, and it turns out it was 8 months prior. And I said to myself, I know I'm gonna have to pay out of pocket because insurance only covers one per year, but I'm doing it. I'm here for 3 days. I'm doing everything head to toe. Best decision I made, although it would have been caught, a few months later. But the way they were behaving, I just knew that it was cancer. And I just kept telling myself, I don't care what I have to go through, I wanna live. And that was really the focus. And every morning I just kept saying, just super grateful to be here, grateful for, I don't think I've ever appreciated this community more in terms of access to the healthcare we have, and having health insurance. But yeah, it was a lot. But I think I'm also kind of wicked sense of humor. So I have friends, Tony Sane, Nikwe, Amy, who would come over and tell just terrible jokes. I would laugh my head off. People brought me food. So I think, that's the cancer. In terms of the business, I think it's just kind of figuring things out and not really, I would say, like, don't limit how you can grow your business by what you know. There's other people that know. And now you have Google. I didn't have Google, nor did I have LinkedIn. But I think, whenever we get backed up against a wall, it's just like, who can help us figure this out? So not limiting, what we can do as an agency or as a community by our knowledge, but someone out there knows. And collectively, we can get a lot of stuff done and a lot of good.
Yeah. Great news that you can share now. So I still remember when you called initially, with the diagnosis, and I was in the car with my wife, who was a sorority sister of yours, going through this. Any other kind of lessons you've taken, now that you've had a little bit of time to breathe from this in terms
Yeah,
of lessons you
I mean,
take away?
I think like anything, I think it's perspective. I never necessarily put myself first in terms of taking care of myself. Not enough sleep, not enough exercise, and so I think the pandemic also did a huge change in my life. I was traveling 2 to 3 times a month. I remember November of 2019, like burning out. This is not sustainable. I can't keep going. So I think, having to stop and just sort of retool your body and your mind. I mean, I think the mental health part of, what we've all been through has just been, a shitstorm. And, we talk a lot about that too at the office. We added an additional plan for mental health services and just being very open. Hired a therapist. She's amazing. She swears too. Did it online. I've never met her in person. But I think, just making sure that we're taking care of ourselves first. Obviously my kids were the priority in my business, but, taking care of me now. And also just really deciding what I should be in and what I should not be in. What do I need to be in? And then I also took up beach tennis. I'm a big beach tennis. I know you're all thinking pickleball, but I am in Miami Beach.
I think that's what, when you called me, you said, I'm about to hop on a plane so I can go play tennis.
So I can go play. I was supposed to go tonight to play tomorrow, but it's raining. I'm a big addict. Fastest growing beach sport in the world. Google it. It's amazing. So I became an addict of that and walking, but really just prioritizing. And I think that we've all have had to do that in the last few years. Just like what's important, what's not, just letting go of kind of the BS of things that, whatever, like that's not a big deal. That person just cut me off. That's okay. They're having a bad day.
So wind it back a little bit and talk about launching a business while you have 1 and then 2 young daughters. And you're one who dives in. A lot of people might pause, or a lot of women in particular might not start a business at that stage. You've done it, and now have 2 amazing daughters who are off in college, and talk about kind of the impact you're trying to make on them, as your mother had on you.
Right. I mean, I think for me, I didn't have a choice. I had to work, and I was the main breadwinner. And so I think it's actually maybe a little bit easier when you don't have to choice. Like I have to do this, and it cannot fail. Like it was like failure was not an option. And so I think I look at my daughters, Gabriella, who's online from Boston, hi, wherever you are, and working, and Alessandra, who's finished her first year of college. I would say, being a role model, I think that for them, it was interesting in our house because their dad was a public school teacher, was able to be with them more than I was. I never really made my work, like I didn't want it to be sad for them, like, oh, mama has to go on a business trip. This is my job, this is what I do, this is how, we support our family, and so never making it sad or trying not to feel guilty. Of course you feel guilty when you miss, birthdays, but it's not just women. Men miss special events too, so it's not a gender thing, it's a human thing. But I would say, I think it's good for them, and I think in this world, everyone has to work. There's very few people, very few households where there aren't, both parents working, and so I think for them, being able to see, Gabriella will crack up, but I remember, I think she was like 4, and I was heading somewhere, and she grabbed a little tote bag, and she had her little play phone, and she's like, sorry, I'm busy, I've got to get to a meeting, and I was like, oh God, this is terrible, and then I looked, and I'm like, no, it's not. She is busy, she is going to a meeting with her cell phone. Good, honey, go, and I had a lot of support. My mom would come and live with us half the year from Brazil, and just having a lot of great support. And I always would tell my friends who chose to stay home with their young kids, they wanted to be there for the baby stuff, and I'm like, I want to be there when shit is hitting the fan. Tweens, teens, when they're going into college, and now I'm really good at the career advice. So I think we all have our skills and our moments in time where we can make our contributions, to our families.
So the entrepreneurial path for a mother, I think we've got some amazing examples where it's additive. And do you see it as a trade-off, or is it positive in terms of what they see and how they're aspiring to be?
I think it's
like you or other leaders.
If that's what you want, I think it's super positive. It's not for everybody. It's not easy. And so I think it has, and it's given me a ton of flexibility too. I get to control my calendar. I strategically, where we lived, where my kids went to school, and where I officed was within a 3-mile radius. That was all very strategic so that I could leave here, go carve a couple pumpkins, go back to work. But I do think, obviously having that flexibility and being able to control the things, obviously there's things you can't control, but having that, I think, was really positive.
Important for the kids to know you're within 5 minutes of being home.
Right. I forgot my, it's like, okay,
putting out the problem.
Right.
Yeah, right. So transitioning a little bit in terms of NOC, I've heard you say, that DE&I is really part of your DNA. Can you talk a little bit kind of about the culture within NOC in terms of being involved in the community, and you're involved in so many causes and supporting organizations, as we heard just a partial list of some of the boards you're involved in. Just talk a little bit about how for you personally, and what you said early, you didn't put your name on the company, but you walk into your building and it's like the culture of it is all about you. And kind of that, DE&I is a big piece of that. Can you talk a little bit about how that motivates you and how you, make that happen within NOC?
Yeah, I think, obviously it's a big topic, the last few years. I would say that it's always been in our DNA, obviously being, female, Latina. And so I think it's interesting. I think that people are drawn to NOC because of the staff, and I always tell people, I'm a lot of times the only, as many of you when you get into rooms, and so I think when you have a collective of onlys, you feel like you're a part of something. You're not one of 100 and so I think that people are drawn to NOC, and I would say that it's not just me, it's all of us, it's our leadership. When we vet people, what's important to them, collaboration, respecting people's opinions and their backgrounds and their experiences. And so it's also not solely focused on race, ethnicity, and gender. It's also focused on experiences and lived experiences, and having people from all different kinds of backgrounds that bring amazing contributions every day. And so I think for us, and I remember, pre-George Floyd, maybe even 10 years back, people would either put me on marketing committees, or I was on community relations, which then turned into diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging committees. And for me, I was sort of puzzled, like, oh, okay, I think I understand, but it was hard for me to sort of share how we do this, because it's always been a part of who we are. It was never part of the strategic plan. It was never like, okay, we have to have this goal. And so I think, today we continue to do more, and we have to do more. But I would say it's a part of who we are. It's why people are attracted, to our company, and I think it's great.
So obviously hiring people is a big part of that, kind of trying to reinforce the values as you look at opening other offices and having that culture and that approach and those values. That's got to be challenging.
It'll be, the Chicago team is, some of them moved from Minneapolis. I can imagine that half of our office is going to want to, in November, apply and want to live in Miami. But absolutely, I think we do a really good job of vetting, people, and just making sure that the values are aligned. And so, just as we're interested in their experiences and their work experiences, we're also super interested in what they're passionate about. Like, what do you do for fun? And I can't always ask questions. I think HR limits me from asking certain questions. But I think it's like, what languages, do you speak any languages? I had a guy say vacation Spanish. I was like, you're hired, you're fun. You know, I think it's just making sure that, we don't always get it right, and, you know, but it has to be, as much of a fit for us, it has to be a fit for them too. So if they're not bought into kind of collaboration and you know, the types of people, you know, then I think that it's not the best fit. So no matter where you go to work, you need to make sure that, you know, you feel like you can contribute and also learn.
Yeah. So you talked really positively about your experiences here at the university
I had a lot
in the
of fun
80s
here.
and admire you. I know a lot of our peers and friends, you know, did they come back for a few years, which is a much more challenging path than just following the herd and getting your degree. So congratulations doing that. I admired that. And then you went off and got an international degree and were traveling all over the world, which seemed to fit you perfectly. Talk about kind of, you know, why you know, continue to invest in education and what you get out of it.
Sure. I did finish my master's on time, so that was really important.
Well, because they let you travel around the world.
Yes, so it's a program called the IMPM, the International Masters of Practicing Management. So it's all about the practice of management. It's not an MBA, but there's a lot of, you know, components to it. And so we were in 5 different countries. It's founded by McGill out of Montreal and Lancaster out of the UK. And we traveled in a cohort of 20 from 13 different countries to China, India, obviously the UK, Canada, and Brazil. And then you were required to do an exchange with one of your cohorts. And so I was in the Middle East. I was in Dubai and I was in Doha. So that was, I always tell people, it was incredible. I had an incredible experience, but I said it was like I was in a movie, but no one was filming. I was shadowing a man in the Middle Eastern business. It was absolutely fascinating. And I think for me, in particular, I always felt that I was like super global. And what I recognized was like, oh, I haven't even like touched, you know, the tip of the iceberg here, you know, and having classmates and having to work together for, you know, each country that we were in, getting through language barriers, cultural sort of things, and learning, while learning. And also I started early 2011, so the US was just crawling out of the crisis. But as we traveled, we were in a different country every 2 to 3 months, so we'd come back. We were divided by continent, and we had a professor who, you know, we would Zoom in with and work on things. But as we traveled together, that recession, you know, it kept hitting different parts of the world. And people were super vulnerable. I mean, it was, you know, I had classmates from Korea, Japan, the UK, Kenya, lots of people from Europe, Canada. So it was absolutely fascinating. Only 4 women, which I was a little sad about, because they would divide us in groups of 5, and of course, 1 in each group. But I used to be a little intimidated that I would die, like not knowing everything. And I think when I came back, I was completely comfortable with the fact that I would die and not know everything because somebody else knows. But being able to learn from, you know, my classmates, and reflection was a big part of the program, which those who know me well know that I don't really take time to stop and think. I just kind of do. And so being forced to write things down and to think about your experiences and what's shaped you was incredible.
Yeah.
And we still connect, and we've gotten together a couple of times.
So there's the formal education, but your travel schedule is pretty taxing as well,
Yeah.
in terms of globally. And is that pleasure, does that feed into the creative work at NOC and understanding the global brands you're trying to help build? Or
I think so, yeah.
how did you find that alignment?
I mean, I think with our team, I think what's interesting is that we've never really looked at things, like it doesn't have to be so literal. Like you can take ideas from retail and bring them into healthcare, financial services. And so I think when you start to think and build a culture like that that's brought into our clients' businesses. And so we'll see the teams, and it's really cool. It's an incredible culture of sharing, but people will come like, look at this cool thing that they're doing over here, and I think that we can translate this to this other client or this other sector, and then having that global lens, that it's not just, we're like, what is it? How many people are we now? 8 billion? Like, we're like just this little teeny dot. And so I think being able to have, open our minds to the world and having people learn. I've had some of my cohort visit, and some of our team, came on some of the country trips with me to Rio, of course, they did. And so, because that was really fun. So I think absolutely. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, no. And before we open it up for questions, just talk a little bit about looking forward with you and NOC, and you've been at it for over 20 years now. Is this some, it's become such a huge extension of your life, and what do you see yourself being able to pull away at some point? Or
absolutely. I think absolutely. Not today. But I do, and we've got an incredible group of leaders, and really thinking to the future leaders of NOC. And I think for me, I tell people, like, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea what I was doing. I've gotten us to this place with this amazing team and partners. I'm not sure I'm that person to take it to the next place. And who that might be, but just being open to the possibilities of, I'll have some role, booking people's travel. I'm really good at that. I can make espressos. But I think also, not letting the ego get in the way of the future. And so, as long as I am relevant, contributing, helping the company grow, and I think that, but I'm super excited about our staff, and we've got an incredible team that, obviously proven when I've traveled and gone away for my little stints, they've been phenomenal.
Yeah, no, that speaks very highly of your team. So I know we've got a lot of your supporters in the audience here. Do we have microphones, Amy?
Yes, we do. So everyone gets a couple of minutes here to think about a question for Lili. So we're gonna go to our first one. But Gabriella is watching, and she's just said, "Hi, Mom." So FYI, you say hi, but we'll let you go first here.
All right. Thank you. Hey, great presentation. And remember, everybody is marketing in their own way. And I have a saying, if you're not living, you're not learning. If you're not learning, you're not living. And I can ride a wheelie. But anyway, you have a touch of Chicago. So my mentor has been Ron Majors outside the University of Minnesota. I don't know if you know who he is. He was the #1 anchor man down there for a lot of years. But my question is this. In all the first Tuesdays I've been to, and I get upset if I can't attend, but we had Kelly Dorn from Dorn Construction, who did a lot of the construction at one time here on the University of Minnesota. And he spoke about his business and having cancer, as I do and you have. And he's talked about expanding into Arizona. And the first question that I asked that day was, do you have a fear of that? And he said, well, we can do all the research and study sales and all the fundamentals we're taught here at Carlson how to study. But until you really get into the market, you either will or you won't, and you don't know right away. And I think Miami's a good market, but do you have any, and I wish you the best, I do, and you didn't mess up today at all. Do you have any real reservations about doing that, expanding some more?
I think it's something we've actually taken a lot of time to think about, and I've been spending, I purchased a place there 11 years ago, and really studying that market and watching it grow, and also seeing, I read the South Florida Business Journal every day and Miami Herald, but also seeing the significant investments that a lot of companies are making there. I think the other thing is that there's incredible shared workspaces, so I think when we worked in New York, having to sign a long-term lease can also, that would scare me. But I think, now that we have all these other amazing options that we can go in, do a shared space, a small shared space to start and continue to grow, much like, Knock, working out of my house, cup of Java, the coffee shop, sharing an office, getting our own office, buying a building. It doesn't scare me as much as maybe it should, but I think that, we're being really thoughtful about it. And then also hiring local people in the market is really important, to not come in and think that we know everything and everyone, and getting networked. I mean, that's something I've been doing and investing in some of our team as well, just spending time down there and joining organizations and sponsoring, much like we do here in Minneapolis. So I'll keep you posted.
Hi, Shonda Smith-Baker here, Lili. I have always, back to you, I've always been super curious on just how did you come up with the name Knock?
That's great. So Knock, it's a long story. I'll make it very short. Both my parents were superstitious, and so they knocked on wood. So I grew up, so you'll see me doing a lot of this. So I would say this idea of knocking on wood, but also, we've had a lot of fun with it, opening doors, opportunities. But I would say that it's mostly been, we have a lot of wood in our office, so there's lots of places to, do that. And you're wearing green, and that's something else. My dad was Irish American and my mom was Brazilian, and they had those two things in common, knocking on wood and green in their flag, so.
All right. Awesome, thanks so much. This has been so insightful. Jeff Aggie. One of my companies is called Next. We've been around for 6 years, global design. And human-centered design has been a key aspect of everything that we do. A lot of it is my background. But more recently, we found it really challenging to be as human-centered within the organization as we experience company challenges. Knowing that human-centered design is a big aspect of everything that you do, how have you managed difficult times within your company to remain human-centered design, to remain as centered on the humans in your company as possible, while also growing your business or facing challenging times? And do you have any examples of a difficult decision that you might have had to make?
I mean, I think, again, I felt, sadly, I felt like I had an advantage because I was paying attention to what was happening, and we talked a lot about it. Like, what does this mean? And when we, shut down, I remember I was actually in Miami, flew back. I was with Alessandra, my other daughter, who might be up and watching me. But Alessandra, if you're awake. But when I flew back, we had already, everybody was at home working. I do remember going to the office and standing there, and you've been in there. It's like this energetic, amazing space. And I literally burst into tears and thought, oh my gosh, when are we going to be back together again? How are we going to do this? And so I think, as leaders, we spoke a lot. Our board was really incredible, but putting people first, that was our number one priority: health and safety, mental health. And so for us, that was sort of the focus, was like, how are we going to get our staff through this, and our clients, who also were going through significant challenges, depending on, we're in hospitality, so our hotel client, everything was stopped. People were furloughed. People were, cut to whatever, 80%. So I think for us, it was mainly like, we have to put people first, and how are we going to manage, with the technology. We did open our office as soon as the governor said we could, and like a great creative agency, we put a homecoming team together, and we followed all the rules, but everything was branded and ready. Some days there were 5-6 people, but we mainly opened for mental health reasons. We have a lot of people who were either living alone or young people who shared an apartment, and they, one of them said to me, there's no longer a distinction between work and home. I wake up looking at my laptop, I go to bed looking at my laptop. And so for us, it was not a requirement, it was just if people wanted to come in, they had to follow, of course, all the masking, and we had enough wipes and whatever, the hand sanitizer stations. But then also adding in technology. How are we going to make sure that all of this is going to work? Purchasing the owl. I don't know if anybody here uses the owl. I was actually kind of skeptical. Like, how's that going to work? But it actually works really, really well. And then retooling. Like what's working, what's not, and really staying connected to the staff. I mean, we had communications out every week, and really making sure that the leaders were continuing statuses. I think that was a big part of it. And then just making sure that we were checking in and making sure people were okay. And then, I think, morale was actually pretty good. We kept up all of our staff, even though our business was down 35%. We kept everybody. And so morale was incredibly high until the murder of George Floyd. And then, that just sent us into just, a big depression, many of us. And so especially where our office is. And so I think that was a whole nother, like how to check in with people and make sure that people were okay. And I mean, it was beautiful. We had people offering people to stay with them, depending on where they live. So I would say, just the communication and checking in and it's, just being real. Like it wasn't easy or fun. It's still not, for those who don't feel comfortable coming in. But yeah, there's no handbook, or playbook. Hopefully I answered your question.
All right, we have time for one quick question. Did you still had, okay.
Hi, I'm Larissa Martin. I'm a recent graduate from the College of Liberal Arts, and I was just wondering if you have any advice for young professionals that are just now starting their career.
Well, I would love to give you lots of advice, but I would like to also I would also ask a request for those people in the audience that own businesses or work at major corporations. I know a lot of the internship programs were halted or stopped or canceled. We continued ours. We never stopped, and I would say that it puts a lot of young people at a huge disadvantage, and especially the last few years. So if you've stopped your program, I would hope that you would start it back up. And if call me, we can share how we've done it. And we actually had our interns show up yesterday, 10 of them in person at the office. But I would say just, I think sometimes you think like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then that doesn't work out. And so I think it's just like being open to new ideas and not being so hard on yourself. I think asking, and I think all of you linking in with each other and asking each other for introductions. It takes that one call, that one meeting. Of course, once you get it, you have to do the work. But I would say, asking for help, asking to meet with people, and not getting too down if people, can't come. I mean, I think it's sometimes you take it really personally, like, oh shit, they canceled on me. I think it's just it's gonna work out, and you're gonna find something, but also just being open to maybe something that you hadn't considered before. So it doesn't have to be transferable. It's experience. It gets you in the door. It gets you working. It gets your, keeps your brain, thinking and learning.
Great. So while Kathleen makes her way back up to close things out, first off, I want to thank you it's been great reconnecting over the last decade, everything you've done for our students, the university, and the broader community. But I think you've also got a call to action. My shoulder is still sore from going to the doctor yesterday.
Right. So when I got the diagnosis and I started to, I was completely freaked out, of course, telling my family, the business, what does it mean, clients? And so as I started to tell my inner circle, everyone looked at me like, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And I looked at them like, are you up to date? Have you gone in? And then you'd get the look like, no. And so I said, well, here's what you can do for me. We're gonna leave this meeting, or you're gonna hang up, you're gonna call, and you're gonna text me when your appointment is. Men, women, colonoscopies, prostate exams and mammograms, whatever else you need. And I've had, you're number 84. 84 people who have gone in for their stuff. And, women, mammograms dropped to the age of 40. If you have dense breasts, make sure you get a 3D. Also, colonoscopies have dropped to 45 unless you have family history. And so, and what is it for men? Is it, what's the recommended age?
40.
40, okay. So, so do that for yourself, actually. And maybe raise your hand if you're gonna text me.
So we'll give out Lil's phone
Yeah.
number. For those who want to.
Don't miss those appointments.
Oh, Lili, we can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your experiences, your talent, giving us some insight into your businesses and who you are as a person. Very special. John, thanks to you for leading the conversation, and thanks to all of you here at McNamara and those of you, family and otherwise, joining us on Zoom. This is our last First Tuesday of the season. I'd like to welcome you back into the next season of First Tuesday, which starts August 8th, with Jeff Harmoning, CEO of General Mills, and our new Dean of the Carlson School, Jamie Prankert. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Have a good summer.